Hi everybody, my name is Katie. Welcome to episode number 12 of the Creating Christmas Island series. Today I'm going to be working on the area outside of Santa Claus's house. Let's go take a look at that area now. Here you can see I have a big wide area that goes from the path coming up to that little path that goes down to the secret beach. And then we span across. Here is Santa Claus's house that I'm in front of at the moment. I need to be able to finish the lake up here at the top where those flowers are planted and finish decorating the space near his home. So over here, as I am completing what I'm going to call Santa's North Pole Park, the whole entire space is really inspired by one object in the game. And this is an object that you can get from Gulliver that I'm placing down now. It's actually called the South Pole, but for obvious reasons in my Christmas Island, I'm going to consider it a North Pole object here. And I really felt as if it was the kind of object that was as if they were establishing the North Pole back when it first started. And here was marking the area of importance where everything was coming together. And so they were definitely going to put a memorial sitting area, kind of a park around it. I know it probably sounds a little silly, but I like the way that really becomes an inspirational and important place, and it could go in front of Santa Claus's house. As I really start working around this area, I am focused a lot more today on the paths that I'm using and the design that those paths are creating. So I started with just the basic brick pattern that was already going on and finished connecting the different areas. I'm sort of establishing the layout. And now you can see I'm adding little bits of embellishment here and there. I wanted the path itself to be a big part of the decoration that I was doing for this area. And again, I'm trying hard not to use very many custom patterns for paths so that I have more room in my custom design slots. And so I'm really focused on the different types of paths that are usable in the game as part of the construction app. I liked this little brick pattern. I think it shows up really well with the snow. It looks kind of soft and warm, but you can still see where it's at. And I'm adding in holly bushes. The holly bushes obviously will have to grow up before you can see them fully. And I'm starting to create the layering. So here you can see I changed the middle to a different path type, and it adds a lot of dynamic really to the area. And I wanted to create these petal shapes. So I play around with trying to decide. You can see I put it down and then I immediately decide I want to connect them the other direction. And this is nice because it fills in a really wide space with a decoration. I also knew that I was going to be putting a custom pattern over the top when I was finished with the area, but I hadn't decided which pattern I was going to use yet. So at this point, I'm just creating a pattern with the paths themselves, just really filling in the area. I like the way that the points looked more like a wreath on the ground when they were coming together in this way. After finishing up with the paths, the next step is to put down this fencing, and I debated on a lot of different fencing styles and finally decided to go ahead with this. This is actually called the Spooky Fence, and it's a new fence that we just got in the Halloween update in October, but it actually looks really delicate and beautiful when you have that snow that sets on the top. I actually don't think it looks that spooky anymore once it hits winter. And now I'm just setting down, this is the black garden lamp. These are the smaller ones. I do come in later and put the larger lamps down in place. So I'm layering different light styles within this area. And that's something that I do tend to enjoy doing when I put together areas that are intended to be fancy, like a plaza style area. This little well that's tucked into the forest is just meant to add variety so that the forest has some character to it. And I needed this part of the path to go somewhere. So I just stopped the brick path pattern and I'm adding in some of these custom rock designs these are a design that I use all the time in different areas of my island. And I'm just dropping them down in place randomly so that it finishes this end of the path. So now as I'm finishing up a little bit of the design in the area here, I'm moving over in front of Santa Claus's house and taking that path forward. And this is just a pretty basic step here where I'm going to be connecting the path. I go ahead and use a straight line. It would certainly be great if we could do a diagonal line, but since we don't have fencing that does diagonals very well, and the paths don't look terribly good when they're in a diagonal, I decided to go ahead and stick with that straight path. At this point, I went ahead and time traveled forward 3 days so that the bushes would be grown up into the shape that they're supposed to be, so that I could really see what the area was supposed to look like. And I'm putting in the larger lights in the far out corners of the space. You'll notice that I chose not to use the holly bushes. This is actually the orange tea tree bush. And I chose that because I liked the color of the leaves as they matched. The shape and color is beautiful, but because I actually didn't want that to be the focus of the area, I wanted the bushes to be a secondary design instead of having that red pop. Just basic green sometimes is good enough. And now I'm putting in a bench. I was just checking to see if that's what I wanted to go with, and it is. So I'm playing around with patterns on the ground. This is a patchwork pattern that I like, but it just didn't look like the kind of thing you would walk on. So I stuck with my regular rock path here on the bottom and am dropping down the iron. This is the iron bench that I'm putting down on the middle here. And it does a really good job of framing that North Pole in so that it looks really important and create spaces to sit down in. I really hope my villagers come up here and sit in some of these benches. I think it would look really cool. Here I'm trying that pattern as maybe an option for these corner petal shapes. I told you before I really wanted a custom design on them. I'm pulling in some of that Christmas flair. And so I go ahead and I put that pattern down all the way around. And even though I got about halfway through and knew that I probably wasn't going to keep that pattern there, I did go ahead and finish it because I can come into my custom pattern app and just change the pattern out for something else without having to replace the pattern down all the time. And then there you can see I just put a little bit of the holly leaf down on those spots in the middle of the path. I love the way that it makes that path look special, but I'm only using one custom design and in 3 spots. So it doesn't slow the game down by having to render that image over and over again. It's a really good tip if you're trying to conserve the custom pattern spaces that you're using. Here I'm just taking, this is the white and red windflowers. They're both basic flowers, so all you need to do is grow them from seeds. And I'm dropping them down on some flower beds in front of the house. I think they look so much like a peppermint candy cane style when you do the red and white back to back. So I'm just dropping them in place. I really think the windflowers look beautiful during the winter season. If you notice here, I have the black street lamps that I've used are just for the park area. And since the rest of my island is using the green street lamps, I go ahead and finish that last space by Santa's house with the green one. I'm trying to be consistent, but if you look just in that spot and wonder why there's a green and a black, then that's why. Here is where I'm putting the lake in. I really enjoy having my water make sense. I want the rivers to flow from a body of water down through rivers and out to the ocean the way that water is supposed to run. And I'm at the very top level of my island, so I went ahead and I'm creating this lake. My rocks, I usually go through and make a rock garden as part of my builds, and I had some space ideas in place for them before that I changed my mind about. And instead of creating a brand new design, I decided that they looked very cool, at least these two up here, part of the woods. They look like they're part of nature. So I'm going to let them stay right where they are. And I'm putting the water kind of around it. I made it look a little bit more natural, the way that it comes together. I went ahead and planted flowers and bushes down in this area because I hadn't decided yet how I was going to finish it, and I felt like this would at least close the area off. but I do decide to use this really cool, it's actually one of the ice sculpture trees, and I customized it into green, and it did what I was looking for. All right, you guys, let's take a look at the final area. You can see where I changed the pattern out on the little panels to be kind of a candy cane stripe instead of the patchwork one from before. It was really nice and bold, and I like the way that it added to the area. Gave it good contrast, and it matched the stripe on the pole itself. And as we come back over here to Santa's house, you can see that green tree that I put down at the very end. And then looking up to the house, which we will do the inside of the house at another time. I hope you guys found something useful here and that you continue creating in this game. Until next time, have the best Animal Crossing day.